Hello and welcome to our training video for Lesson 3. This is going to be a little project that's in your Lesson 3 packet called Using Totals and Counts. And let me show you how it runs first, and then we'll talk about the way we did it. This is just a little project where I'm using a regular list box, and when the person clicks on stuff from my store, you'll notice that when they click on the Add to Cart, it grabs what they put. It grabs the item that they chose and also puts the price in. That's because I've hidden the price over here in the list box. I'll show you in a minute. If I take sunglasses, I can add it to the cart. Umbrella, I can add it to the cart. Golf balls. And then when I check out, what it does is it shows how much they spent and how many items they purchased from my store. That needs to be formatted correctly, doesn't it? So notice what the behavior is. Nothing happens when they click on these items here. Nothing happens till they click Add to Cart. And so the code for doing this is inside the click event of this cart, and then it's not until they click on this button that they actually get a little friendly sentence that tells how much they spent and then how many items are in there. Okay? So let me show you a couple things about this so that you can see how to do this kind of a project. Now what I made here was a slightly simpler version of what I just showed you that's in your packet, but what I did was I just took away the checkout button. We're just going to have one cart. And what I'd like to do is when they pick items from my list box and they hit Add to Cart, what I want to do is to show the item they chose, then the price, because I want to make sure you know how to do the string manipulation for those. And down here it should show us how much they spent, and just keep a running total of the amount in dollars and cents, and then down here in this label show us how many total items they spent. So they've spent $200, they bought 3 items, 4 items, whatever. These are both labels with the form border style property set to fixed 3D, just so you can see it like I normally do in class. 2 regular text boxes. This is TXT item, this is TXT cost, this is LST items, and then my button over here to make it work is BTN add. Okay? So let's take a look first of all at the list box so I can show you how I put in the items. I did it at design time in the items collection down here, just like I've shown you before. Whoops, sorry. And you'll notice that let's pretend I was putting in the price for umbrella. I'll come back here and get rid of it. You just type the item that you want, and then I hit the space bar, hold it down a little bit, and I put my pricing way over here somewhere. Okay? Don't ever worry about lining them up. Don't worry about doing them in alphabetical order or anything. You don't need to do that. The list box itself will sort them if we want it to, and what I want to show you is when they choose, for example, sunglasses, I want to take this entire piece of text, because that's what it is. I know it looks like 2 pieces of data, but to the computer that's 1 piece of string or text data. And what I want to do is I want to say start over here on the first letter, the first column, if you want to think of it as columns, and grab 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We could even go a little farther. We could say go take the first 12 spaces or first 12 characters and put them up here into this item text box so we can see what they bought. And then go over here to column, what is this? This is going to be 12, 13, 14. I'm sorry, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. You can see it's a ways over there. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 35. You can almost go to 40. You don't have to have them quite that far apart, but it just depends on how wide you want your list box to be. So I could come over here to say column 35 or so and take the rest of this and put the price over here into the text box marked cost. Now in the meantime, while it's doing that, I also want it to strip off all the blanks out here, because if they pick hats and it takes the first 15 characters or so, I'm just going to have nothing but a bunch of blanks. Well, we don't want that on there because I really want it to look really nice and be uniform. So I'll show you how to do that. But as you're putting information in these list boxes like this, just remember, put your stuff over here, leave a little bit of a room, write down what the longest value is. My longest item happens to be this one, which is about 10. So I'm just going to take the first 10 or 12 characters, and then you just count which column over here is kind of in front of your numbers. And I don't go right up to the first number. I leave myself a little bit of room, because remember, we're going to strip off the zeros anyway. All right? Now again, if you make your list box too big, you're going to see all the numbers. I didn't want to do that. If you want to do that, you can, but they just don't line up, and you'll never get them lined up. There's a trick to it, but let's just do it like this. All right, here's how we want it to behave. When they click on the Add to Cart BTN Add, I want it to take what they chose, put up here, put the price in here. Let's do that. So I double click, I make a click event handler for the BTN Add, and let's go ahead and put this in. TXT item is what I called that first text box, is going to be equal to, and we're going to use the mid function. I think I told you in class that using the Visual Basic left and right is kind of a pain. I used to use that left and right all the time, but now I am using just the mid function because it works just fine. So list items dot selected item, I want it to go out and start at the first column or the first letter, and I want to go out, let's just go out 15, okay? Now what's going to happen is when I run this, let's just run it to make sure, and they pick umbrella and add to cart, it should, there it is, takes umbrella and puts it in there. Hats, add to cart, puts it in there. See how that works? Okay, so that part's working. But the other thing I want it to do is I want it to trim off all those blanks. A couple ways to do that. Let me show you this way. If you trim, this is going to trim off leading or blanks on the left, and right trim. We used to have L trim and R trim, which would trim blanks from the left part of a string. R trim blanks from the right part of a string. Trim does both, so that's all I use. And when you want to use trim, which is a built-in VB function, okay, you just type trim. Anything you want to trim has to be in parentheses. So this whole mess has to be inside of parentheses. Okay, just like that. I know it looks kind of funny because you've got double parentheses down here. Just make sure if you have two right-hand parentheses, you've got two left ones somewhere in this thing. Now you saw the way I programmed this. When you're learning, this is the best way to do it. Do that part, test it, make sure it's working, and then come back in and add your trim function. Okay, it's just a lot easier. Once you get a little practice, and you can just kind of do it all in one thing. All right, now for the other one, the TXT cost text box, I called it, we're going to say, let's go out here to, we know we're going to trim, all right? I know I'm going to trim, so I'm just going to do that. And I know I'm going to use the mid function, so I'm just going to do that. And I'm going to type lst items dot selected item. And this time we're going to start at column 35. And I'm just going to go all the way to the end. Now if you remember, when you use the mid function, it's just a string function that allows you to pull pieces and parts out of an existing string or a piece of text. If you just tell it where to start, and in this case column 35, and you don't tell it where to stop, it just goes all the way to the end. So in my particular case, with this stuff in my list box, if I tell it to come out here to column 35, which is over here somewhere, it's just going to start at 35. It's going to take all the rest of this till it finds the end of line character, and it's going to strip off the blanks, so my pricing should work just fine. Now if you find that when you do this you get $5.45 or you get 56 cents or something, then you've come over too far. You've told it to start way over here. You want to start back here. I always start off in here somewhere, like I say, just to be safe. Okay, that's just been my experience. So let's run this little puppy and see what happens. And this is going to get rid of the blank, so it should look pretty clean. Sunglasses, aha. Shirts, okay, see how that works? Nice. Don't you love it when it works? Okay. Here's what we're going to do. The next thing I want to do to make this whole thing work is I want to keep a running total. That was the point of this whole project. I want to keep a total of how much they spent, and I want to keep a total of how many items. So in order to do that, let's create a couple of variables up here. Now I'm going to do something that is going to show you some debugging things. I wanted to show you some special stuff here. So this is why I'm doing it this way. Grand total, I'm dimensioning a new variable called grand total, and I'm going to use money, so I'm just going to make it single precision. I could have made it decimal. Let's make it decimal. Who cares? We haven't done decimal in a while. And I'm going to initialize it to 0. I'm going to create another variable, and I'm just going to call it num items. This is a typical term that I would use in all my programs. And this is going to be a very little number, so let's make it a short integer. That's only 2 bytes. Could have been an integer. you know, whatever you want, no big deal. But I just like to show different things just so you get a feel for some of these different features that you can do in VB. Now here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you how to take and create a running total, and this is how you do it. This is one way of doing it. You're going to say the grand total is going to be equal to the grand total, if I could spell it would help, plus whatever they typed into the cost of that new text box. Okay? Now let me explain something to you. When you first see this, it looks kind of funny, but here's how it works. We've just created a memory location called grand total, and now I'm telling Visual Basic, you know what? The new grand total value, so think of that as new, is going to be equal to whatever grand total was plus the new price they put in. So this just keeps a running total. What if they type in $50 here and the grand total was 0? Okay, 0 is going to be equal to, I'm sorry, the new grand total is going to be equal to whatever it was, 0, plus $50. Okay? Now the next time we run the program, the grand total is going to be $50, right? So if they put in another value that says it's $100, okay, and this is the second time that they've clicked on it, the grand total should be 50. We're going to take, I'll put the 50 here, because that's what it was, and we're going to add the new 100 to it, and now the grand total value should be 150, so it keeps a running total. Alright, now let me show you the new way that people are doing this in Visual Studio. It's kind of a shortcut. I don't know if you're going to like it. You can do this. You say plus equals txt cost dot text. These two lines right here are equivalent. They do exactly the same thing. You can type it this way, or you can use it the new way, just like that. Okay, it's just a little bit shorter shorthand. All the other languages use it, and they've added it to VB in version 2 of 2003 and 5, and so you may want to try it. Okay? Why don't I just comment one of those out? Let's use the new way. In fact, I'll just get rid of it so we don't get confused. Now the only thing I want to do here, you guys, is I want to, as I told you, whenever you're doing money stuff and you're converting from one data type to the other, we want Visual Basic to really treat grand total as money. So I'm going to convert whatever they typed into this text box to a decimal. We're not going to take any chances. Alright? So that says take whatever they typed, convert it to decimal, because grand total is a decimal, and add it to the old grand total value and just keep on going. Alright? So let's take a look at how and see how this works. We'll do one at a time and see if it works. If I click umbrella and say add to cart, okay, it's doing that part. Okay, so we haven't hurt that. What I want to do then is I want to show the grand total down in that label, and I want to see what I called that. This label here is called LBL total spent. Alright, so let's do this. LBL total spent text is going to be equal to grand total, and probably what we should do is we should convert it to a string so that the text box treats this as string data. Here we're taking this string or text, convert it into a number, and now that we've converted it to a number, we're going to convert it back to a string and put in the label, because labels text boxes like strings. The other way to do this is kind of a new way, but if you don't like that, you can do it like this. Okay, you do SCSTR, convert to string. So if you like using the little abbreviated ones, you can use the convert to decimal and convert to string functions like that. Okay, this that .toString is just new stuff. Let's see what happens. I'm going to pick hat, and it's $9.89. Okay, now here's our running total. I didn't do anything too fancy with it. Now shirts, we're going to add to the cart, and it says $17.99. It says our grand total $17.99. Now that doesn't seem right. if we do another $30, you see what's happening? It's not keeping a running total. All right. Now I did this for a particular reason because I want to teach you something. When your program runs just like this, but it's not giving you the right amount, or it's not giving you the right answer, I don't want you to immediately assume there's something wrong with your code. There's not a darn thing wrong with the way we wrote it. There's nothing wrong with the logic. What's wrong is I put something in the wrong place, and that was the whole point of this lesson. And the other point of the lesson is I want to show you some debugging things. I want you to look at this. One of the things that Visual Studio put in here for us is something called breakpoints. And to add a breakpoint at this line right here, I can push